Tom Clark's Main Event is a Boink Studios production. Follow us on Twitter and Facebook at Boink Studios, and check us out on boinkstudios.com, where you can see all of our projects, past, present, and future. And now, on with the show.
This is Daddy's show. Step off.
Hey, what is up? Welcome back to the program, folks. Thank you for tuning in. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Tom Clark, and this is Tom Clark's Main Event. We're back once again with another thrilling, action-packed episode of the program. Glad you are with us. And this time is episode number 130. A little bit different format than what we're used to here on the show. We've been live every Friday at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Wrestling Rumors Facebook. Been doing that since the fall of 2018. It's been a good gig. I'm enjoying it. Still there, by the way. It's been a while since I've actually done an episode in studio, as it were. Just the one-man show. But never you fear, folks. This is not just the one-man show this time. This time we have a very special guest. That's right. If you read the title of the episode and you know what's going on here with the show, and hopefully you do by now, this is the Greg Valentine interview. That's right, folks, the Hammer. Tom sits down at one-on-one with the Hammer to talk about a litany of pro wrestling topics. The chief among them is the new 350 documentary that's like 10 years in the making, I think is the tagline, which is the truth. Greg did his part for the documentary about 5 or 6 years ago, is what he said. The documentary right now is available on iTunes. If you would like to check it out, it is also coming up on a DVD and Blu-ray release at some point coming up very soon. There'll be info on that to follow. All you gotta do is follow yours truly. A column is forthcoming that contains links to this episode and a transcript of some parts of the interview. So, looking forward to that. Please keep your eyes open. And as always, man, we thank you guys for tuning in, hanging out, and reading and supporting the show and supporting me and all that good stuff. Still having a blast doing this. And anytime I get to sit down with a legend and talk to him one-on-one, it's awesome. I've got to do this a few times in the past. Randy Orton, Big Show, a few others there here and there along the way. So this is This was a big deal for me. You guys know me. I'm old school. I grew up a fan of the territory days of Jim Crockett Promotions, and that's my jam, baby. That's to this day is my favorite era of pro wrestling. I still will go back and watch Worldwide Wrestling and watch the old Dusty and Rick matches and just be in awe of what a great time it was to be alive. Today's a great time to be alive too, folks. If you're a pro wrestling fan, because there's just so much to choose from, so many opportunities to watch pro wrestling. So many different options out there, but it's hard for me to beat the drama that was 1980s pro wrestling, and no one really epitomized that better than Greg the Hammer Valentine. He had a great career. The guy worked in Mid-Atlantic Championship Wrestling for Jim Crockett, NWA, went back and forth with WWF, worked in WWF, multiple championships during his illustrious career. Famous tag team partner of the Nature Boy Ric Flair, done a lot of other stuff along the way, had a great feud with Roddy Piper, which we covered in the interview. And a very down-to-earth guy, very humble. Sometimes you'll come across the veterans of the business, and they've been called old-timers before, which, depending on who you are, whether or not you're using that term in a derogatory manner, it may or may not mean any offense by it. I certainly never have when I use the term myself, but he's definitely a veteran. And sometimes when you run across those guys, they can come off a little bitter. They come off a little jaded, come off a little, jealous or whatever. But he made a point to say in the podcast that's just not who he is. And there's no reason for me not to believe him. He's 100% genuine. He's the real deal, folks. One of the best interviews I think I've had in a very long time that I've ever had, period. I mean, Greg was fantastic. Very easy to talk to. Genuinely a good guy. Before we get into the interview part of the show here, I'm going to go ahead and give you a little bit of a warning up front. Typically what I do is I will take the audio recording and I will re-record my voice. I'm just in full transparency here to you folks, my audience, who I never work, I never lie to, okay? And because, for one thing, I want to clean it up and make it sound as good as possible, so it hits your ear in just the right way. And basically, I'm not really mimicking what I said during the phone call, but, I'll sort of get close to it, and sort of like get to the same sort of questions, how I'm asking the questions, that kind of thing. I did not do that this time. Number one, pressed for time, as I always am. But number two, I just wanted the conversation to come off more genuine and more relatable and just more organic, as it were. So hopefully that comes across when you guys listen to this show. So what we're going to do is we're going to pitch to the interview. This is typically what we do. We pitch the interview, and then we come back and wrap the show up. So we're going to come back and say our thank yous to everyone that helped make this possible. And in the meantime, enjoy the interview. Here he is, Great Hammer Valentine.
So the documentary is called 350, of course, and it's about life on the road for pro wrestlers back in the day. How was this for you? Was this fun to get into? I mean, did you enjoy the experience, or what did you take away from it?
Yeah, well, I got to see how it all turned out. I mean, it was 5 years in the making. I think I did my part 4 or 5 years ago, but I still felt the same. But to see it last year, they premiered it all over the country in July, I believe. And so now it's getting ready to come out on DVD and everything, right? So my experience, I thought it was great. And when I got to see how it was done, finished product, it definitely hit a nerve, and it definitely was what 350 days was about, was all the life and times on the road that we, what was it, 365 in a year, we probably spent, I don't know if it was 350 days, but it was close, on the road all the time,
That's just, I mean, I don't know if anybody can even imagine that. I think the guys now are on the road around 250 days is a typical WWE grind, which, is still big. That's still a lot of number. That's just still a big number. But for you guys, it was your entire lives back then. And you talked a lot about Roddy Piper. And I know you guys had one of the most legendary feuds of all time, and still being talked about to this day, the dog collar match, of course. But you also traveled with Roddy. How was that? I mean, was that just like two brothers hanging out, or what kind of relationship did you have with Roddy?
Probably the best relationship you could have with another wrestler, plus we're in there beating the hell out of each other every night. But before he became the baby face and all that, we did a lot of, and we didn't have to wrestle each other, so we did a lot of road trips together. And Roddy was a great guy. I remember he used to write notes, and I go, "What are you writing all those notes for?" I'd be driving or something. He would write down everything on a pad with a pad and a pencil, and go through what he was going to say on the interviews. And he excelled in interviews. He was great.
So a lot of people talking about Roddy. Hindsight's 20/20, that kind of thing. But a lot of people talk about, man, Roddy should have had a world title run. He was that good. He should have been on top. Do you ever think about that for yourself? Do you ever look back at your career and say, I should have had a shot? Did that even matter to you when you were actually on the road?
Well, I had the belt for the world belt for 30 days, but I mean, I had 40 different championships, and a lot of people, they look at that, you should have been a world champion. Well, I agree with them, but it just didn't happen because I was in line, and then I was in, not really for the NWA belt, but the WWF belt. I was definitely in line there. And then Vince McMahon Sr. discovered Hulk Hogan, and that was the end of that. That's who he wanted, so.
Right.
Rocky III or whatever movie it was in came out. I believe it was Rocky III. And he got a lot of recognition for that. And he took him from Minneapolis and stole him from Bern. Not stole him, but, it worked out. And so that's what they wanted, so it worked out good for them.
Yeah, we look back on that time now as the WWF sort of blowing up and going mainstream. Did you guys realize at the time how big it was getting? I mean, were you aware of how big it was getting at the time?
Yeah, because see all those other territories that I worked, like Texas, California, Missouri, you name it, Florida, Carolinas. I was friends with all these promoters, and I went and asked Vince one time at a meeting with him. I said, "What are you doing going against all these guys?" He says, "It's not I'm going against them. The way I'm set up, the way WWF is set up, is to go nationwide and eventually worldwide." So, I mean, that's how he explained it to me. And in order to do what he wanted to do, he had to. He didn't just. I mean, he put him out of business, but I don't think he did it intentionally. He just went in and bought a bunch of TV time and went for it. And he grabbed the top talent from all over and gave them good guarantees and stuff, and the rest is history. The only one that actually kept going was WCW in Atlanta, and he eventually bought them out. So.
Took over the world, for sure, no doubt about it. So Jimmy Snuka talked about, in part of the documentary, about how important it was to him that his mom loved pro wrestling. I mean, he really lit up every time he talked about her. Your second generation star, did you have that? Seeing as how it was sort of normal in your family, did you have that moment where you couldn't wait for your mom to see you or anything like that coming from home?
Well, Johnny Valentine was my dad, and greatest wrestler in my mind ever. And I watched him when I was a kid, and I watched him at ringside when I was 18, 19, before I got into the business, and so that was my sole inspiration right there, Johnny Valentine. Now I would watch back after my dad got crippled in a horrible plane crash after that, but I would watch some of my stuff nowadays. I'd look back and I go, damn, I wasn't trying to imitate my dad, but it just came out. I was like he spit me out or something,
Mm-hmm. Was he supportive of you getting into business? Was he okay with it?
Not at first. He didn't want me to do that. He wanted me to go back to college. But after, I guess it really, I've been working about 5 years, and then he had that plane crash, and I went to see him in the hospital in your area there, Wilmington, North Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
And Jim Crocker was there at bedside, and he goes, I'm passing the torch to Greg. So it took him to be crippled from the waist down to give up his spot to hand it to me. Ironic as it was, but it was sad. I didn't want to take the choice like that, but it all turned out great for me, and my poor dad suffered another 20 years before he finally passed with that horrible injury, and his back was broken in 5 places, and it was real bad.
Was there ever any doubt in your mind that this was what you wanted to do? Did you ever have a moment to pause and say, I'm not sure about this, or were you all in from day one?
Well, when I was up in Calgary breaking in with Stu Hart, freezing to death, and making about $50 a week, and I go, please. So I remember calling my dad, and I says, please get me out of here. He sent me to Detroit with the original Sheik, and after that it got better. And the longer I was in it, I mean, even when I was in Calgary, I mean, I was determined that I was going to make it or break it, and so it all worked out. It's just determination. Plus, I had that inherited talent that God-given talent that I got from my father and that God gave me.
I love how you described your gimmick as no gimmick, and I know that that's something now that's sort of become the norm. I mean, there's still characters, there's still over the top personas and things of that nature, but now it's sort of, here's this guy, here's his name, here's how he wrestles. But for you, especially, depending on what company you worked in at the time, it was sort of a different take. Did you care at all about doing anything different? You said, hey, I'm Greg Valentine, that's it, that's all, take it or leave it. Was that sort of your mindset?
Yeah, I wanted to wrestle just like my dad and be convincing and believable. And there was no gimmick about me. They put the handle as the Hammer, so it was, instead of just Greg Valentine, it was Greg the Hammer Valentine, which is great for me. But, you know, I earned that name, the Hammer. I used to bend the guys over the top rope and smack them across the chest, or I'd drop that elbow smash. And then later on came the figure four leg lock. So it was all wrestling. It was no nonsense wrestling, no gimmick about it.
So they also talked in the documentary about how dangerous it could be, especially for the heels back in the day. I'm sure you've got stories, but was there ever a time for you personally where you were legit fearful for your life because of fans maybe in the parking lot or threatening you or coming after you? Anything like that happened to you?
Well, you know, Boston was a real vicious town. You know, you'd get people would try to take pot shots at you coming out of the ring, so they built a ramp so they couldn't get to you. But there was another city up there. What the hell was the name of that? Lowell, Mass. Oh, my God. Mm-hmm. Just a round building and people. Lowell, Mass, and what was the other? Worcester, Mass. I remember watching Kim Patera come out of the dressing room and someone dropped a balcony. There was a balcony over the top where you'd come out of the dressing room, and there was a balcony, and this guy dropped a garbage can on top of his head. Almost killed the poor guy. Wow. And then there was people that would spit on you. And one guy spit point blank on me in the face when I came out of some dumb town called Steubenville. I call it Stupidville. Steubenville, Ohio, and he spit right point blank in my face. I hauled off and hit him. Didn't mean to, but I broke his jaw. But got sued for it, but WWF took care of it because, you know, it wasn't my fault. And actually the most fearful place I ever wrestled was Puerto Rico. I remember they raised my hand. I beat some Puerto Rican champion down there, and some guy threw a whiskey bottle and hit me right in the back of the head, and I started bleeding all over the place. And luckily, there was a hospital right across the street. Mm-hmm. Sewed me up, and I kept on going. So, you know, but I never was. I was always taught if there was a riot going on and the people were starting to close in as you were coming out of the ring, you just made a beeline for the dressing room. You don't stop. You don't argue with the people. And you don't hit them back even though you're getting blows on the side. You just mow right through them and get out of there. Mm-hmm. You know.
And I'm sure the problem was, I guess maybe part of the problem was if there was a baby face, maybe the guy you just worked, he couldn't help you in front of the crowd, right? I mean, if he couldn't, because you're breaking kayfabe if you do that, so you're kind of on your own getting out of there in the first place, right?
Oh, definitely. Definitely. I mean, I probably, in my career, some guy like Tito or something would have threw a block in if they could, for fans come in, or they'd let me know. I remember I was in a cage match, and I can't remember who my opponent was, but he told me, there's a guy right behind me. Guy crawled over the cage and came in and was coming after me, some big old plowboy. I turned around and just hit him about 3 or 4 times, knocked him down. The police came in and drug him out of the cage.
Wow.
Yeah.
But the funny part about that is, if there is a funny part, is that a lot of guys today would kill for that kind of heat, and they can't get anywhere close to that. A lot of it's not their fault because now the cat's out of the bag, everyone knows, that kind of thing. But just to have that amount of heat, I mean, that was a badge of honor for you, wasn't it?
Yeah, when I first went in New York and started doing that figure four leg lock and breaking legs on television, and people being carried out on a stretcher, every time I would go for that figure four, the people would go nuts. And because, like you said, the cat wouldn't out of the bag then, some of the people thought, oh, it's fake. But, my dad always said, hey, make them believe what you did. And that's what I did. And back then, we still tried to make them believe that it was for real, and that's how we drew money. I don't know how they draw money now. I think people had maybe forgotten that they admitted that it was predetermined, but no one mentions that anymore. So maybe that's why it's still drawing money, but it's not the same. I mean, still the cat's out of the bag, like you said. Back then, they believed what they were seeing, and that's how we drew money. I mean, they wanted to see Tito or JYD or Chief J Strongbow come back and kick my ass,
Mm-hmm. So I know Flair in the past has spoken about the day he first got to WWF. It was a complete breath of fresh air. The way they did business, they were professional. It was all above board. Having just come from WCW, where they, treated him very poorly toward the end of that one run, of course. Did you have a similar experience when you first got up to New York? Was it like, man, this is totally different from being in the Carolinas?
Well, the Carolinas treated me very good. Joe Scott was a booker. Jim Crockett was a promoter. I had no problem. They sent me to New York because Vince needed some talent up there, and I was happy to go. And then I was going back and forth for the next 5 years, back and forth, NWA back to WWF. The pay was great, and then WWF, the pay was greater because it was bigger cities, bigger crowds. When he went nationwide, I enjoyed more 79 to 84 before he went nationwide because we would stay right there in the northeast part of the country. I mean, we go as far as Bangor, Maine, and go up to Toronto and Montreal, whatever, but as far south as D.C. and as far west as Pittsburgh, but it was right there, that northeast quadrant of the country. And that was, I made probably just as much money as they did when they went worldwide. Then you're on an airplane all the time going everywhere, Japan, Europe, West Coast all the time. So, I mean, it was a thrill. It was all, you were on the WrestleMania 1 and beyond. It was a big thing that was happening with the business, and I was glad to be part of it until kind of got out of hand in 1992, and I wanted to leave because it wasn't the same, It's they were bringing all kinds of gimmick guys in, and they were bringing guys in that were muscle bound, but they couldn't wrestle worth a damn. So it kind of changed, and the believability started changing, and so I just wanted to get out of there. Now WCW for a while, when I went down there, it was a wrestling. I mean, wrestling. It was still wrestling down there. Vince was getting away from what he wanted in '79 was to bring. I'm talking about the old man now. He wanted to bring more wrestlers in to get what the South had and make it more believability. But in '92, Vince had passed away, and then Junior was running it, and it was getting more gimmicky. I didn't like that, and so I moved on. But, then they went through the Attitude Era and some other stuff, but I was already gone. I went out on the independent, and I didn't change my style, and it kept working for me. So
you're talking about leaving in '92. I have to ask you about rhythm and blues. How did you enjoy that when they told you, let's dye your hair black, let's do this? What was your reaction to that?
Well, we were already a tag team together. Me with the blonde hair and whatever.
Right.
They asked me. It took about 8 months for them to talk me into it, and I didn't mind being honky tonk sport. I've been in a lot of different tag teams that were successful. I didn't want to dye my hair black. And I remember Jimmy Hart come up to me in Phoenix, Arizona. He had the black hair dye, and he says, "Come on, Hammer, you got to do it." And I go, "I don't want to do it." And they finally talked me into it. I went back home and saw myself on TV, and I said, "Damn, I look like an Indian instead of Elvis." So, but I cleaned the gimmick up, and I always work hard on everything. I said, "Well, I already went this far. Let's try to make it work," and it was working. And then and it was a departure for me because I was always a serious, hard-nosed wrestler. Believable. So I go, this is what I have to do to keep my job in 1991 or wherever that was when everything turned gimmicky. So I acted like I played a guitar, and I look at replays and I just laugh about it. I said, shit, I did a pretty good job. But I didn't like the black hair. And the sad thing about it is they were getting ready to put the belts on us. And then Vince McMahon finally signed the Road Warriors, who we always wanted, and got them from WCW. And more or less, we were out of a job. And he laid me off, but I get Honky got mad and quit, but he laid me off, but he didn't quit paying me. And then he started sending me to Japan once a month, and that was good. And eventually I came back. But then eventually I didn't like my position at WrestleMania 7, so I got out of it again, so, in 92. It brought me back for a few things in 94, a couple Royal Rumbles and Survivor Series. But then 2004, they put me in the Hall of Fame, so that was all good.
Mm-hmm. It's amazing to talk about what could have been. I happen to think that a feud with the Road Warriors might would have been money. I mean, just the contrast in styles alone. You got this big powerhouse legendary tag team, and you've got you and Honky sitting there, got the gimmick, got the image, got the sort of the lighthearted stuff going on. If for nothing else, that would have been just on the face of it a huge contrast in styles. And of course, you are a smash mouth in the ring as Hawk and Animal were. And the matches probably would have been better than good. So it's a shame that feud didn't actually take place.
They went another direction. So it's all good. I mean, it all worked out good for me. I went independent and found out there was a lot of money going to Japan and going to Europe. Not for WWF or anybody, but just independent. And we did great money. In fact, Ultimate Warrior, he had left for WWF too, and so he was on one of the tours. It was Ultimate Warrior against Hercules, and then me and Jake, and it was Greg Valentine against Jake the Snake, and we went all over Europe, like 3 different tours. Went over to Asia. Everything we did jam up business, and Vince even tried to block it, said he owned their names. You can't do that. And it didn't work, because, I trademarked my own name, and most of the other guys did too. So.
Mm-hmm. So you talked about getting the Hall of Fame in 2004. That's a huge topic conversation for fans because you've got some people that say, well, it's just on paper. It's not a physical Hall of Fame. It doesn't mean much because it's Vince saying yes or no. It's not getting voted on by fans or anything like that. What's the truth? I mean, I know you can only speak for yourself, but what did it mean to you when you got the call, hey, we're going to put you in?
Well, I was thrilled. They put Andre the Giant, probably was the first one to go in, and some other guys. And they did it for maybe a couple of years, and then they didn't do it. And then finally in 2004, Vince decided he's going to open it back up, and it worked really, really good. And it was in Madison Square Garden, and there was 10 of us that went in. And after that, it was a big success. It was always, now it's part of WrestleMania. Who's going to be in the Hall of Fame? So it turned out to be a big, big deal. And WrestleMania 20 is when they inducted me. I did my speech at the Hilton with the other guys. Jimmy Hart inducted me. And then they put us all out on the stage at WrestleMania 20 and brought us all out. It was great. I believe that, I mean, like they say, there is no Hall of Fame. There is a real Hall. I'm in this one, too. It's called the Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame in Texas, where there's actually a Hall of Fame. And they actually got one of my robes and boots and stuff. But they're, Vince, I don't know, you know, he's got that big office in Stamford, Connecticut, and he's got pictures of all the wrestlers in this big hall that are in the Hall of Fame, but it's not open to the public. But, you know, if he did do that, I heard he was thinking about opening someplace. At first I heard it was Madison Square Garden, near Madison Square Garden in Times Square. He was going to do it because he had this WWE cafe thing going. Mm-hmm. But that closed up, and then I heard he was going to do it in Orlando. I haven't heard any more about him actually doing a physical one. But I mean, it's a real McCoy, and I think that everybody that's gotten in there deserves to be in there. Some more than others, but who am I to say? But yeah, I don't know who decides that, but the ultimate decision goes to Vince McMahon.
Mm-hmm. So you had sort of you weren't the only guy that had this, I'm sure, but you had the time put in with Crockett, Mid-Atlantic, and then you went to work for Vince, and later on when Vince began the sports entertainment thing instead of calling it pro wrestling, I mean, were you conflicted about that at all? Did you care about, okay, now you're a sports entertainer, you're no longer a pro wrestler? I mean, did that bother you at all? Was that ever a cause for concern, or was it just, hey man, I'm here, let's just do this?
Well, that's why I left in '92 because of that sports entertainment. But it got even worse. But I guess I got used to it. And around when they put me in the Hall of Fame, and I said, well, you know, it kind of 10 years had passed since I left, 92, well, 12 years. So I kind of got used to, you know, they kind of went beyond it. I guess maybe people forgot that he tipped his hat about it being as being pre-planned and conceived, contrived, whatever. And by the time I went to the Hall of Fame, I'd forgotten all about it.
Mm-hmm. So I'm going to ask you this, because I'm curious. Do you follow today's product? I mean, do you ever tune in and watch Raw or New Japan, or are you following anything that's happening today?
To be honest with you, I don't watch it. I watch it because I'm there, and I think that's the granddaddy of all the pay-per-views, and they do a good job with that. But it's hard for me to watch, not because I'm jealous or not because I wish I was in the ring, which I can still get in the ring and probably wrestle some of the best. But yeah, it's just when you're not, you know, I watch just enough to know what's going on. Mm-hmm. And stuff keeps popping up on my phone all the time, so I don't have to watch the darn thing. Something's always popping up, whatever kind of news and that. But no, I couldn't sit down and watch 3 hours of that stuff. I couldn't do it.
Mm-hmm. Would it be hard to sit there and watch a match without dissecting it the whole time and saying, God, why are you doing that? Just do this. Would it be hard for that too?
Yeah, because grab a hold, you know. I hate that running the ropes all the time, and I hate some guy getting a guy and hitting him 25 times in a corner. I'm exaggerating when I say this, but I'm just trying to get my point across. I don't like that. One or two punches, flying there and down and grab a hold. That's, if they let me control the wrestling, I'd slow it all down. I'd tell them no more running the ropes. Yeah, I would change a lot of things. So it's hard for me to watch it, so I don't.
So let me ask you this, and I'll let you go after this, but I'm curious. If WWE called today and said, we got a spot for you in NXT, we want you to come down, talk to the kids, help coach them up, I mean, would you be interested in doing that? Have they ever reached out to you to do anything like that before?
They did. It's been a while ago. I went up when they had a training facility in Ohio.
Mm-hmm.
I went over there one day, but they got mad at me because I left too soon because I had a booking in Toronto, so they never called me back on that. But I had a little experience in talking to, you know, it's hard for me to teach anybody my style. My style was inherited from my father, and studying him and watching. It's hard for me. I really don't, you know, I could do seminars and stuff like that, but if they asked me to do something like that, yeah, I'd give it a try. Yeah.
And there you go, folks. There it was, the Greg Valentine interview. Hope you enjoyed that. Hope you had as much fun listening to it as I did recording it. As I said before, Greg was fun to talk to, good interview. One of the best I've had in a while. And, you know, as I said, man, I'm an old school fan, dude. So to be able to go back and relive some of those days, not just watch it on TV, but get to talk to the men and women that lived it, it's always a treat for me. So it was a pleasure to interview the guy. So my thanks, of course, to Greg the Hammer Valentine for giving us the time here on the show. Also to Rafi Gomez with VC Inc., which was the PR firm that reached out to the show, reached out to me personally about doing some work here for the documentary, and also to get some to get an interview going. So much thanks to him. As we all know, folks, and I've reminded you of this many times in the past, anytime I get to do something like this, it always comes with much gratitude and at the thanks of other people involved. It's not just a boy out there hustling trying to get some things happening. It's also sometimes something as simple as an email to get the ball rolling. Sometimes it's a question from me or a question from somebody else. Sometimes it's a telephone call at work. And it just, you know, it just goes from there. So again, I'm very grateful for this. I do my best to keep the show going here. We hope you've enjoyed it. Remember that you can catch us live every Friday at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Facebook Live on Wrestling Rumors. That's Wrestling Rumors on Facebook. Remember, you can follow yours truly on Yahoo, or excuse me, on Twitter. You can actually email me at Yahoo if you want to. It's perfectly fine. TomClark1278 at yahoo.com. You can follow me on Twitter at TomClarkWrites, WRITS. And as always, BoinkStudios.com, which is in dire, drastic need of a freaking update. So, yeah, go check it out if you want to, man. But give us a follow on Facebook. If we're not friends on the Facebook, please send me a friend request, and I will accept, and we will be buddies and pals and all that good stuff that follows. So it's a big month coming up, man. We are just getting out of March. Can you believe that? Already out of March? It's crazy. The old man just had a birthday, so happy birthday to me. So, you know, it was good. Can't complain. Can't complain too much about anything these days. You know what I mean, man? Life is good. So it's all good on this end. April's going to be a big month, as we know. It's a WrestleMania season, folks. Yours truly is going to be working all that weekend, all WrestleMania weekend, doing nothing but writing, probably not sleeping much, watching a lot of wrestling. I'm still 2 nights away from getting caught up on the New Japan Cup, so I'm going to try to do that here sometime within today. So if you haven't been watching New Japan Cup, you've been cheating yourself, folks. It's been a fun ride so far, as we all knew it would be. That's all I got for you this time, man. As I said before, please feel free to come back and check out the show on Wrestling Rumors on Facebook. And as always, we do appreciate your time. That's all we got for you. We will see you next time on Tom Clark's Main Event.